Oh, sorry, the member for Riverina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's not often I find myself in furious agreement with the Greens leader, the member for Melbourne, but the points he made, towards the end of his contribution there were quite correct. And people who come to this country to work under whatever visa arrangements should be treated every bit as fairly and equally as an Australian worker, and should be paid their due amount. In that respect, I agree with him. I don't think anybody in the parliament would not concur with that. The Migration Amendment Strengthening Sponsorship and Nomination Processes Bill 2024 is policy that the Coalition generally supports the intent but there are some concerns, and I appreciate that these will also be flagged when this reaches the Senate. There are concerns about the process to determine if an occupation is of the relevant skilled occupation list. I will digress a little bit, Deputy Speaker, but I well remember when I was the Deputy Prime Minister and we were putting in place certain new visa arrangements for certain occupations, and the member for Flynn will be interested in this. We had a list of occupations that came under these skilled clauses, and one of the skilled occupations that was not on the list were truck drivers. And I note that Ron Finnemore, who has his own transport company, synonymous with the red and green colours livery, he advertises all the time in my local newspaper, the Daily Advertiser, and online for truckies. Finnemore's has searched all around the world for truck drivers. He, like many other regional truck companies, have B-doubles and other rigs backed up to fences in their yards because they simply can't find workers, and yet it wasn't on that skilled migration list that we had in place, and I think it was a missed opportunity. I know the member for Gladstone has a heavy vehicle driver's licence. He's got a proud owner of a very fine Mack truck, semi-trailer, and he knows just how important trucks are, particularly in Queensland, large state, lots of goods and cattle and stock to be moved around. But truckies keep our country moving, and I defy anybody to deny that a truck driver who can reverse a B-double into some of those tight nooks and crannies, particularly around supermarkets, if that isn't skilled, if that isn't high skilled, then I'm badly mistaken. But we didn't do it. It was a missed opportunity at the outset, and I think in any of these skilled migration clauses, acts, bills, lists, call them what you like, truck drivers should be on the list, if not top of the list. How quickly will the skilled occupation list be able to be changed to respond to changes in certain occupations is a consideration that I raise. How will one list address geographic skills gaps? And you would know, being the member for Lingiari, that outstanding electorate in the Northern Territory. I'm very proud of the role I played to continue to have Lingiari as a House of Representatives seat, and you would know full well, Deputy Speaker, just how important it is to have those skills gaps filled in our regional electorates. I don't think our city friends get it. I'll just put that. Doesn't matter what side of politics they are. I just don't think they understand the complexities of regional living, and particularly outback living. And I admire those members who are in those large, sprawling outback electorates for the job they do to advocate here to get more skilled people into their electorate. So, Deputy Speaker Scrimshaw, thank you for what you do. Another consideration is how quickly will the list be able to be adjusted to seasonal requirements, and that's another thing. And I know that unfortunately Labor is axing the live sheep trade, and shame on Labor for doing that. But you get these city types who get up there with their prepared notes, and they talk about, oh, let's just send the Gulf states boxed meat, chilled boxed sheep meat. Well, you know what? They don't want it. They want sheep, live sheep, offloaded off very high animal welfare standard ships, Australian ships, to have for their own processing. And the city members won't get that, Deputy Speaker, but we get it because we're from the bush, and we get it because we have farmers, particularly stock producers, who come to our electorate offices and tell us of the hardships they have to find people, tell us of the hardships they have to truck their stock, and all the other factors that are important considerations in the important work that they do, and the important work that they do is to feed us and to feed other nations besides. But more than that, try finding enough workers to fill the roles required in abattoirs. It's very seasonal work. It is very seasonal work. And then it's hard enough to find them in Wagga Wagga, where we've got the biggest livestock exchange in the Southern Hemisphere, let alone Forbes, which is also in my electorate for the time being. We've got the second biggest livestock centre in the Southern Hemisphere. And Wagga Wagga has a fine cattle processing plant. And Forbes is trying to reopen an abattoir. They've got plans to do just that sometime in the future. I know the Cootamundra Meatworks has reopened and is now doing multi-species, where before, when it was owned by the Manildra Group, it was only doing sheep. But they're in places where there are plenty of workers. Try finding workers, skilled or otherwise, to fill those places, to build new abattoirs in outback, remote Australia. Good luck. But, you'll get the Teals who'll stand up there and go, oh, yeah, let's just build more abattoirs. Yeah, let's build Rainbow Land while we're at it. I mean, it's just nonsense. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They never go beyond the sandstone curtain that is the Blue Mountains to ever find out what's going on in regional Australia, and then they expect to lecture us in their pious, perfectionist way. I hope in my next life, sanctimonious, absolutely sanctimonious, thank you. And, I hope when I come back in my next life that I can be as perfect and pious as one of them. But we move on. And how well will the skilled occupation list cater for the different employment needs across regional areas? This is simply unknown. And I know when I visited the Northern Territories, I did often when I was the Deputy Prime Minister, how hard it was to find mango pickers. You got fine mangoes up in the Northern Territory, some of the best in Australia. But it's really hard to find people to do that job. Now, some city types will tell you, well, that's, that's just this picking mangoes. How hard can it be? But it's very hard. It's very tough. It's back-breaking work, and it's also skilled. There's a lot of skill to do that. There are real concerns, and it is unknown how well Jobs and Skills Australia will function and respond to the needs of the employment market, and that's the other consideration that we do need to take into account, and that's Jobs and Skill Australia as to how it will adapt and how it will adopt this particular legislation once passed. It's unknown as well what influence the unions will have on shaping the jobs that are listed on the skilled occupation list. Will we have the CFMEU limiting the number of builders that are who are allowed to get a visa so that they can artificially prop up their ridiculous wage demands, exorbitant wage requests? And this has to be a real consideration. I mean, you had the CFMEU there just recently wanting to stop all work on any AFL projects simply because somebody who was in charge of the AFL umpires, they didn't like him. They didn't like him. And so they tried to bully boy John Setka and his thug mates tried to bully boy the AFL into sacking the bloke. I mean, this is Australia. It's not Europe back decades ago. This is Australia. It's not Britain prior to Maggie Thatcher. And we don't get run by the unions. I mean, Labor might take a lot of donations from them, but it's this parliament that runs the nation. And I'd like to think that we do it in a fair way, in an appropriate way. That is why we have one of, if not the highest minimum wages in the world. We do. Just last week, I was in Morocco, and I was amazed, whilst I was in Casablanca, to see the Hassan II Mosque. Now, this particular mosque, which was built at a cost of $700 million, although I don't like to talk about that because it's not about the dollars, it's about the faith and what it represents, the symbolism it brings, and that's fair enough. But it was built because King Mohammed VI wanted to inspire the next line of apprentices. And this mosque was built, ground was broken on the 12th of July 1986, completed on the 30th of August 1993. And you should see it. It is an edifice to be admired. If there was the current 7 wonders of the world, it'd be amongst them. It is one of the largest mosques in all of Africa, if not the world. And they built it with apprentices, on budget, on time, and I must say I looked at this, having been the former infrastructure minister, with a little bit of envy, because I thought, imagine if we tried to build something. I mean, just imagine trying to build anything in Australia. You've got to go through cultural and heritage and environment, and fair enough too. But I mean, seriously, we put everything up against trying to build anything. We sometimes are a banana republic. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And that, sadly, is often the case. So, look, this bill is important. And the 3 proposed income thresholds will replace the current situation. The minimum income thresholds are specialist skills income threshold, core skills income threshold and essential skills income threshold, which is continuing, as I appreciate, to be developed by the sitting government. The bill proposes that the amounts for the SSIT and CSIT will be indexed each year on 1 July. Fair enough. Submissions have been put forward to the Senate committee. They raised the issue of wage disparity between a visa holder being paid the SSIT and the CSIT, which could cause wage disparity to an Australian worker performing an Australian role. We don't want that. Of course we don't. But, and I do digress a little bit in just the time remaining, and I hark back to the Pacific Australia Labor Mobility Scheme changes that Labor introduced at the behest of their Labor mates. I arced up about it, and thankfully Labor changed it so that it wasn't going to make a minimum number of hours per week, but they spread it over a longer period. And you'd appreciate this, Deputy Speaker Scrimshaw, because it was about seasonality. And why would you be paying someone who's just going to be sitting around in a part-time capacity, paying them a full-time wage when they can't do anything because of weather or other considerations? And thankfully, the government sensibly, because farmers were walking away from it, dare I say the Pacific Island nations were walking away from it, and thankfully some sanity prevailed, but I do worry because the changes are only put in place for 12 months, and that needs to be rectified about mid-next year. But this particular bill is important. It is, as it says, strengthening sponsorship and nomination processes. If it lives up to its name, and I know Labor are always very clever with the titles that they put over their bills, they make out as if it's going to be the be-all and catch-all, but if it does what the title of the bill suggests, well and good. If it does that, that's great. But I do urge and encourage the minister to place every consideration over what regional stakeholders think and need and want and expect, because all too often this government, which is very anti-rural, forgets those people who put the food and fibre on our plates and on our backs.
Call the member